Good afternoon. First off, a huge shout out to the organizers for doing a commendable job with the conference. Amazing 2 days. So I genuinely hope you learn something new in the next 20 minutes. Now, let's see. I know it's post-lunch. That afternoon slump is kicking in. Most of us want to sleep and doze off. So that's why I wanted to start with this visual. Now, that person right in the center of the image, well, in this story, that person is not me. I got trampled 3 screens ago, left for dead. But here I am, still bringing you this story. I absolutely love this picture because I think it beautifully captures the chaotic energy that all of us developers experience from time to time. Imagine the inside of that battlefield, the chaos, the cries, you feeling that everything is on the line. Well, that's how we felt in my company sometimes when we were dealing with unruly business rules. And that's what the talk is. How did we embrace this chaos? What all steps did we take to untangle the mess we found ourselves in a couple of years back, and how KMP helped us in our journey? And by the way, I am Anshika, and I'm from Norway, and I represent Posten Bring. So let's straight dive into the problem statement. Complex world of logistics, because logistics, like any other industry, is inherently complex. Let me give you an example. When you order that stuff online from Webshop or Amazon here in Germany, right from the time it leaves the warehouse of the webshop until it reaches your home, there are millions of lines of code and thousands of business rules which enable that very flow. I want to ask a question. How many of you here has heard of Post and Bring? Okay, few. For rest of you, if I again give you some context, imagine your great-great-great-great-grandparent. That's how old we are. We are almost 400 years old. We just celebrated our 378th birthday. And of course, the software hasn't been around for 400 years, but it has been around for decades. It has been worked on by a lot of different people, a lot of different developers. And that added to the complexity of what we were dealing with here. So when I joined Post and Bring a decade back, we had this huge monolith, a beast. I see some people nodding, and exactly the image that you get in your head right now. You are new to the company, you do a Git clone, go for coffee, make new friends, come back, it's still downloading the history of the universe. But there was one good thing about that monolith, that all of those business rules that I've been talking about, all of them were centralized in that monolith. But over the years, because of microservices and other feature development, that monolith, that beast, was broken down into manageable apps. And what you see on the screen here is a visual representation of that. So we have front-end apps, back-end apps, internal APIs, public APIs, everything in the mix. But you see what the catch is now. And trust me, we were having a ball not having to deal with that monolith. But you see that X treated as a representative of a business rule. And now our business rules were fragmented. They were duplicated. We didn't have a handle on these business rules. Show of hands, how many of you have been that person, sifting through millions of lines of code, trying to understand what on earth is this code doing? And cursing the predecessor who's written the code. I see more hands up. Exactly, because 60% of the developer's time is spent on understanding code. Instead of writing code, we are trying to understand what is the code in front of us doing. And that was one of the biggest challenges we had. And another thing was, like, say, debugging this. So if not only for production issues and bugs, but like our product owners asking us, hey, how does this API implement this rule? It used to take us hours to debug the entire flow, only to realize that the rule has been implemented differently in different apps. So it was a pain. It really was a pain. And of course, along with this, there were some business consequences. Of course, it was a pain for the team to handle this. Let me give an example. We have 2 services, dangerous goods delivery, that's self-explanatory, and we have something called flexible delivery, where you as an end user would say, hey, I'm not home, so please send it to, throw it in my backyard or on my sidewalk or in front of my door. Now, business rule would say these shouldn't go hand in hand. But for some reason, if we don't have a handle on our rules, you know where I'm going with this. You'll have explosives on your sidewalks. Not that Posten Bring delivers explosives as far as I know, but you get the gist. It was very important that we had a handle on all these business rules. And to sum it up, there was some price attached to this chaos. Inconsistent rule set, slow feature development. It used to take us 3 months to add, or 4 months sometimes, to like add a new feature and then deploy it to production, and sometimes even not that confident that the feature flow would work in its entirety because of the fragmented business rules. And hours lost in debugging. And if I sum it up, I think the biggest pain point was people who had to deal with this code base. We were a unhappy bunch, an unmotivated lot, and I think that's the biggest red flag. So, what were we chasing? What were we trying to achieve? Of course, we wanted centralized services. We wanted duplication to go take a vacation. We wanted lower maintenance and testing costs. But what we really wanted, and we have this at work, and I hope Lord of the Rings fan appreciate that visual, because we wanted one code base to run them all, exactly like one ring, but not to yield dark power, but just to have some semblance of control over these business rules. And my favorite is the last point there. It's the last point on the slide, but I think it's the most important, and that's developer happiness. Because we felt that if the team is happy with the code base they're working with, then it just reflects that we are doing something good on all the aforementioned points. Now, we had this ambitious plan. How were we planning to achieve this? To not get bogged down by the enormity of the task here, what we did was, back in 2019, whenever we started a technical refactoring along with our business features. So when we got a new feature, we started plucking these business rules out of these apps and then dumping them in a common library, which was spitting out a JVM artifact, which was then used as a backend dependency. So that person that all of you related with a few minutes back, they heaved a sigh of relief in 2019, because now they had some semblance of control for the backend APIs. But that happiness was short-lived, because soon we had a front-end app feature, and this was still a mess. But you see, for 2 years, we had created that library and made some source of truth. We didn't want that effort to go wasted. We somehow wanted to use what we had created for all our backend APIs, which was primarily written in Java, and we were using Maven, to somehow also validate our front ends. Also, same rules, just validating all the front end stuff as well. And that's a nice segue. And that's a nice segue to the next section of the talk. So we've addressed the problem statement. Hope now you understand what we were dealing with. Multi-platform. And before we get into the specifics of how it helped us, I think we need, and no deep dives because we don't have time, but we need to just do a quick run through just so that you, anyone who's not heard of Kotlin Multiplatform before now, get like a foundational understanding of what this is. So let's just quickly go through it. First question, what is Kotlin Multiplatform? Basic. Open source technology by JetBrains, announced in Kotlin Conf. I think it was 2017, so it's been around for 8 years. Simply put, that is a watered down definition by our team. It allows developers like you and I to write and share common code across different platforms. So suppose you have mobile apps, you have Java APIs, you have front-end apps. You can write code once and then use it on all platforms. As simple as that. Now, let's chew on it a bit more and discuss all these different things as well. Platform it supports, well, it started with server-side, but now JetBrains has shifted focus to mobile platforms. And the reason for that is very logical, because Kotlin, even though has seen a steady rise as a server-side language in the recent past, it's still predominantly used as an Android technology. So it was very logical for JetBrains to just shift focus to their user base. And this is the most common use case for for KMP as a technology, where it's being used. And of course, it's desktop, which is basically Mac OS, Linux, Windows, and then web, JS, and WASM. So you see there's a huge list of platforms which it supports. Now, the million-dollar question is, what do you share? You have all of this, what do you share? And that's where our team feels that it's the flexibility for us with KMP. It's not a binary decision. It's not a zero-sum choice. What I really like about KMP is that it doesn't force you to commit to a full-scale migration. You choose you. As the visual representation says there, you can start really small, just a subsection of one layer. Or you can share all the layers. Let's just go a little bit more into that. First of all, like I said, the most common use case is for mobile platforms. How many mobile platform developers in the room? Okay, one. But that's fine. I'm not a mobile platform developer either. But all of us are aware of these different architectural layers. Data core to fetch data from database or make a network call to an external integration. Business domain, what I've been going on and on about. And UI presentation, just you clicking around for views. Now, without KMP, imagine you've been given a feature request from business to develop an app for 3 different platforms. Now, without KMP, you will have to have 3 code bases in 3 different technology stacks, maybe 3 different teams. Imagine the amount of overhead and maintenance with this setup. Now, with KMP, like I said, you can start with sharing the business domain layer. If you're very adventurous, you head on to data core, or you can head on to presentation layer. You see there is a progression, but disclaimer, and I'm repeating myself, more is not necessarily good here. You're not required to share all those layers, but you can with KMP. The only thing that's not, you can't share is the UI layer with KMP, because for iOS, you need to use Swift UI, and for Android, you need to use Jetpack Compose still. But I wanted to add, even though it's just 20 minutes, I wanted to add this because this is an experimental feature by JetBrains, which in our team's opinion is a very ambitious project. They're creating a framework called Compose Multiplatform, which they've based on Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose for non-mobile platform developers is nothing but Kotlin used to write declarative UIs. As simple as that. And Jetpack Compose was introduced by Google. So they're taking that, they've built this Compose multi-platform framework on top of that to extend that capability to other platforms. So in principle, because it's still in beta alpha stage, so in principle, when this is stable and production ready, you can have one code base with all the layers written in Kotlin, one language that you can run on different platforms. Of course, the only thing then different would be platform-specific logic, which for obvious reasons you can't put in the common code. Now, some technical jargon. Now, naturally, this is a very common KMP project structure. Your eye would be drawn to the shared module. You see there's common main, there's iOS main, JVM main. Common main is basically a module where you would write everything. Okay. It wants me to just be here. Okay. Common main is basically where the developers would write all the code which you need to compile to all the platforms. Now, the question I had when we started doing the POC was, okay, why can't we just dump everything in common main? Why do we need to have platform-specific modules like iOS main, JVM main, JS main, Android main, and so on and so forth? Now, in ideal world, of course, everything would be nice if it's dumped in the common main. But when you're building an app, you, for some tasks, have to talk to platform-specific APIs. And Kotlin compiler will not allow you to dump anything that is talking to a platform-specific API in common main, because then you can't compile it to all the platforms. And for that, you need to have platform-specific modules. And how the dynamic works is expect an actual mechanism. Let me just give you a quick run through there as well. So you're building an app, and you want a function to get the underlying operating system. Now, the platform agnostic function would go in the common main with that keyword called expect. And if you're using IntelliJ or Fleet, that's JetBrains IDE, it will give you a compile time error if you don't implement the function implementation of that function declaration. So in the iOS main and Android main, you see we have, with the keyword actual, you're actually implementing the function and calling the platform-specific APIs of Android and iOS to fetch that operating system and then display it out to on the UI. Targets, these are all technical jargon, which would be nice if you know about it if you're talking to KMP, if you're talking to someone about KMP. Targets is nothing but a developer writing that DSL in a Gradle build script. You're just telling the compiler, hey, compile this to JavaScript, JVM, Linux, and so on and so forth. And when it's compiled, you get JVM class files, JS files, and native binaries. I'm rushing because it's 20 minutes and the time is going really fast. Source sets and dependencies is, again, a fancy term for POM or a Gradle build script or a package.json. It's basically the only difference between a POM and this is that you need to categorize all the dependencies you need to compile your code under different source sets or those modules. So suppose we've written a huge amount of test cases for our JVM module and JS module, and we need JUnit to write those test cases, and that's under JVM test. Similarly, whatever we need for JVM main, this is from our project structure, like actual code from my repository. So you just club it under the different source sets. Okay, so that was a deep dive on steroids. I want to just leave you with the visuals here. All of the visuals were from JetBrains' official website. I would say go check out the success stories. When you see some of the names there, which we use every day in our life, those are running on KMP. It gave us a lot of confidence back in 2021 to dabble with it. And that's when it also took off. And the third visual that I took was the metric of which layer is being shared the most commonly amongst all those customers. And that is data validation and serialization. So from my before anecdote, it's not just a logistics problem, it's an industry-wide problem. Okay, so let's dive into code. I've done this talk before in a longer format, and I've had demos there, and it didn't go well. So I fear demo gods. So I have code snippets for what I was allowed by my employer to share. Now, most of you would be thinking, okay, we are learning about this. If I want to go back out of this room and try this on a personal project, what do I do? The answer to that is very simple these days. You go to kmpjetbrains.com, you either get a wizard or a template. You just say which platform you want to build this app for, and boom, it gives you a project structure. This is what I was allowed to share. So hopefully that theory would help correlate here. Now you see common main is where all those 100,000 business rules go. And it's not simple, like we have more complex business rules as well in the common main. And because we don't use mobile platforms here, so then you only see JVM and JS main. So what do we have in here? We have a lot of fun methods at work, but I thought, okay, let's start with is shipped by boat, because why not? So is shipped by boat has a lot of rules which determine if the shipment can be shipped by boat or not. Not relevant. All of them are dumped in common main. Why we need JVM and JS main is to expose that rule out to our front-end apps and back-end APIs. And how we do that is by writing a simple, this is the simplest function we have. I didn't want to bring like a huge complex thing out. You would see or you will feel, oh, it's the same function. Why do we need duplication? It's not, because Java, because it allows for more complex and strongly typed code, we have enum in the functional parameters. That won't fly with JavaScript. So you see string there. That's one difference. Second is the annotation. Now, JS export is very crucial here because it tells the Kotlin compiler that this function or class or interface or variable needs to be built into the JavaScript build file that is spit out with all the TypeScript annotations and everything. So it needs to be a global object. It creates a global object in JavaScript that you can access as a regular function. Let me just show you quickly. Oh, wow. I might have to rush through some of the slides. So this is basically us calling that function from our backend API, like a static function. And this is just, you can import it as a normal JavaScript function and then use it like you do with any other JavaScript function. Okay, we talked about targets, so I'm going to skip. Just going to say that, so common main plus JVM main gives us the JVM artifact, which is used in the backend APIs, and NPM artifact, which is then published to NPM, and then we use it in package.json, like import it there and then use it in our front ends. Okay, using the dependency, normal, like we do any other dependency. One good side effect of doing this has been that we use that single source of truth to power our developer side. We used to get a lot of questions saying, hey, we haven't dumped all our rules on developer side, but we have some. So we used to get questions like, your developer side says this, but your API is validating completely something else, like 40 kilos for a service max weight. But now this is live documentation of all the business rules that are in that KMP library. Whenever we make a change there, it's magically reflected here. So have we demystified? Yes, X. And I would say a resounding yes. I think we have, that person has a spring in their step, joy in their heart, and color in their life, because this is no longer a wild goose chase. We know what X is because it's a single source of truth for us. But is it all sunshine and, yeah, unicorns and happiness? No. It's like, this is my message from last month. It's like cleaning a garage. We still have that box that we need to clean out. So there's a bit of a trek left, but we're not wandering aimlessly now. We know where we want to go. It will just take some time for us to reach there. And last, insight gain. What we set out to achieve, I think we've done really good on all of those things. Centralized documentation I just talked about. My favorite is making our product owners self-sufficient. Because of this, my anecdote from before, where our product owner was like, hey, how is this rule working? We're no longer debugging that. We just share that Kotlin file with my product owner, and they can read for themselves. And not only, they have GitHub accounts, and they're rock stars. Not only are they reading code, they're also creating pull requests for smaller things, and they're not going batshit crazy with the code. We review the code that they're writing. But the relationship with our product owners has improved drastically after doing this, which we didn't intend for, but it has been a good side effect. And lastly, the bumps were, well, we started dabbling with it, and we've been using it in production for last 4 years, since 2021. This was stable and production ready. JetBrains came out with it, like as the stable release was in 2023. So of course, our tech leads were a little concerned of us using this in production. And mind you, it's powering some of our more critical apps, which is getting revenue for Posten Bring in Norway. And there were some experimental features, of course, because it was a beta release. They were releasing features every week, and we had to be on our toes. There's some bloating on the JS package size, but if you deal with it, you might experience that. But Webpack 5 support helped us with the optimizations. And okay, I'm already over time, so I'm just going to go to the next slide. Yeah, hope this helps. This short thing helps you untangle your spaghetti if you have a similar use case in your project. So yeah, thank you so much for listening in.